Hey guys! Welcome back to a new video. And today I want to share with you my top 10 tricks and tips that are going to make you a Fortnite Chapter 2 professional map builder. Plan out your builds. Now when I say plan out your builds, I don't just mean the aesthetic part. I'm actually talking about everything, from style to mechanics, storyline, and even island options. The first thing I usually do is when I make a new map, I build a preview of it in wood. Although this applies slightly less to death runs, I highly recommend it for puzzle maps, as it gives you a general idea of how the layout of your map is going to look, and it will help you organize your thoughts and know what is left to do in order for the story to be fully connected. Also, take your time to test out all mechanics and cool new features you thought of. This is usually the very first thing I do when I have a new idea. I go test it out on the very edge of my map and write out exactly what options I had to change in order for it to work. Or I just leave it there so that when I get to implementing that actual part, I can just copy it over. Now for death runs, this can imply that you test exactly how high a bouncer or flipper will throw you up in the air, test out fall damage for droppers or jumps, and for adventure and puzzle maps, testing your mechanics out is going to guarantee you that what you're trying to build can actually be done. Although with the trigger system there are almost no limitations and a workaround is almost always available, try out what you have in mind. For example, for an upcoming map I wanted to make a material shower, so I went in and played around with these item spawners and their options until I got it working exactly how I wanted to. When I actually get to the implementing of that part of my map, all I have to do is look at what I wrote down, go grab my example, and just put it in the correct position. Space control. Now this means organize how big your map is going to be. There's a couple of things that can really help you with it. The first one is, where possible, always start your map a couple of floors up, even in puzzle maps. Use the floor galleries and build them on a wall or a hover platform. That way, if you ever need to go one floor down, there's no issue in building. Let me give you a more specific example. When I was building my prison map, I knew I wanted to have a cave system to escape. Because I built my map one tile up, I could really easily implement this cave that runs all the way under the prison and is not visible from anywhere unless where intended. But don't just plan out the space vertically, also do it horizontally. It's easier to connect big different rooms than it is to rebuild or replace parts of it. It also helps you keep control of how big your minigame is actually becoming. If a player is spending over 60 seconds running from one place to another one in a puzzle map without doing anything else than running, chances are your map is too big or too spread out and the player is just gonna get bored. So give the player the sense of adventure and the feeling that something new is always happening and it's happening for a reason. Number 3. Don't be afraid to test out new stuff. It's how I come up with all my new mechanics. The sky's the limit. Now this sounds very obvious, but play around with every item from every gallery. Heck, I've even built robots from cans, and I had an implementation of a falling item before we had these new item spawners that allowed us. Whenever you think of something, go into a scribble island and just test it out. Check how an item spawner reacts when it's inside a barrier. Check what happens if you combine two barriers with different colors. Go play around with new devices, new options. They're being added almost every week to creative, so even in the case where you really can't find a way to implement what you would like to do, write it down and revisit it every now and then to see if your creation can already come to life. There were times where these pinball bouncers only launched you a couple of tiles up, and where half of these island options weren't even available. If you can't implement it now how you originally planned it, try to make a work around it. So for example, if you want to make a zombie map, but you're bound to the fact that these monster spawners at this moment of time can't drop items yet, use individual monster spawners because they have an option to transmit to channel when eliminated. Bind it to an item spawner, and voila, you can continue getting your map ready for feature without relying on new content. Which brings us to number 4. Stay up to date on creative stuff. Now every update always brings exciting new stuff to creative as well. There's a big team behind it at Epic Games that always brings us new toys to play with. So I highly recommend to always read the patch notes and see exactly what changed. Stuff that we would normally never notice might be added to the game without you knowing it. Extra options on devices, bug fixes, new creative only weapons, every new gallery added to the game brings us so much more than just the items as well. It brings us new opportunities. Now, new concepts of artwork can often be built just by combining these new items. So always throw down new galleries and just go over them item by item. It takes less than 3 minutes, but you'd be surprised at how much new stuff can serve new purpose in your work of progress. Now, another good way to stay up to date on what's happening is follow some of these Fortnite creative channels. There's a new Fortnite creative only official Twitter account, but platforms like Reddit, and there's even a Fortnite creative developers Discord are great ways to always stay on top of your game for map making. 5. Have other people play through your map. No matter how good of a map maker you are, or how many maps you've made and even got featured, always have other people test play your maps once you're finished. Now, in many cases like box fights or build maps or anything like it, testing without someone else is actually impossible. But even for single player maps or adventure games, things that might seem very intuitive to you, because you know the flow of the story, might not seem so obvious for other people. It might seem like they're missing something, or they just ran straight past a hint, and maybe their instinct is to run somewhere else and do completely the opposite of what they're supposed to do. Now, that doesn't mean that they're wrong. It actually means that you need to increase the amount of hints or increase the indicators that where you need to go is the correct path. 6. Creative art, use reference pictures. Now, to really set apart your map from anything else, you can often include something really cool looking. But the most important thing of this is that it looks realistic. So use reference pictures. And take this in the broadest sense of the word. This sounds very logical in a lot of cases, but often just using a couple of minutes to investigate what you want to build can really help the image come together as a whole. So of course, when you want to build a dragon, you look up a picture of a dragon. Or when you want to build a Minecraft crafting table, well, you look up a picture of a Minecraft crafting table. But for example, in the case of my steampunk robot, I didn't really pick one specific image that I then tried to implement or build. Instead, I went looking for what is typical for steampunk style builds and pictures. The cogs, the claws, the engines, and so much more small details from many different reference images gave me an idea of what items I should combine for it to look and feel like what I originally intended to build. Rotating and resizing. Now, before we talked about experimenting and trying out new stuff, but a very important aspect of having a unique map is to rotate and resize objects. Did you know that when you turn snow upside down, it becomes transparent from one side, but still visible from the other side? And you can even stand on top of it. But wait, when you do the same with the lava circle, it becomes invisible as well, but there's no collision. But you won't find this out unless you experiment with these objects by rotating and resizing them. So stretch out garbage bags to make them look like body bags, use giant rocks and make them into a giant ice dragon, or resize trees to make your death run or puzzle unique and different from the typical floor and wall death runs. Which brings us to point 8, memory control. Although this is the most requested change from all Fortnite map creators, for now, we're still stuck with 100k memory. And with these galleries that keep costing more and more to throw down, it's important to know what is eating up the memory in your map. Now, if you're almost finished with your map and you want to add one more type of tree, it might actually be impossible since you ran out of space to throw down a new gallery. So let me split this up in 2 parts. The first one is before you start building, throw down galleries and delete items you'll definitely not use, leaving you only with the items that fit the concept of your creation. Even if you don't end up using them, it's still better to have them than to not need them. The second part is knowing how memory works. So when an item is placed for the very first time, it takes up a minimum of 1000 memory, depending on the texture and the quality of the item. Every copy of this item then usually only takes up 3 memory. So always know what items you're going to need and use these previous hints like resizing and rotating to guarantee that even though you're using the same prop multiple times, it still feels unique. 9. Know the basics. Now that you've equipped yourself with a big bag of knowledge to build, it's important to not forget the basics. Choose in what parts of your build you need something perfectly aligned. In that case, stay away from having grid snap to off. There are many channels and ways to get some extra tips when building, like Discord, Reddit, and they'll change your life when building. Here's two small hints that I discovered myself. The first one is when you want to move non-grid attached props together, just add a floor and copy that floor with the multi-select tool together with your props. It will guarantee that the props stay exactly aligned as you copy when moving them over. Another hint with the multi-select tool you can use is when you have an item that is placed inside a bigger item and you can't seem to grab it anymore, just use the multi-select tool on your phone to select something else, then while holding select, phase and move your character inside the big object. It allows you to select the small ones inside, even though they're hidden. Now this brings us to our last hint. And it's probably the most important one of all, and maybe I should have placed it in the very beginning of the video. Number 10. Subscribe to Fortnite Creative Tutorials. Now this is probably the most pretentious hint I've ever given, but I always try to bring you guys new content. That's why I don't make a lot of basic tutorials. I always try to bring something new to the table in a way you didn't know or expect yet. And as long as you guys enjoy it, I'll keep doing that. So do me a favor and subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to use code Fortnite Creative Tutorials in the item shop to support me, and I'll see you guys soon with a whole ton of new mechanics, maps, and ideas. See you guys soon.